As Michelle just read, on the night before his death upon the cross, Jesus spoke these words to his disciples. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. It feels good to be chosen, doesn't it? To hear the words, you've got the job, or you made the team, or will you marry me? Being chosen for a particular position or opportunity can give our lives purpose and meaning. Being chosen can give us confidence and joy to know that we have been chosen out of all the others to do a good job or play a particular position or share our life with that one special person. Just as being chosen can give our lives purpose and meaning, that same meaning can be completely upended by the grief of being laid off from that job, or fired, or let go, or by illness, or injury, or divorce, or the death of a spouse or a partner. Circumstances beyond our control, beyond our choosing, can change that which we had chosen, and can cause us to question all sorts of things, including, will I ever belong? Will I indeed find life-giving purpose or meaning again? Some years ago, I was making visits at Northland Care Center. Among those I was visiting that day were Mabel Volden and Gladys Christensen, two of our parish members who happened to share a room. And one of them, Mabel Volden, had recently, at that time, quite a number of years ago, suffered a stroke. And so I stood at the center of the room, as I often do when I'm talking to two different people, and I stood in front of a bedside table where communion would soon be set. And I began to turn to a passage in Isaiah that I was planning to read, but at the last second, I'm sure by God's Spirit's leading, I chose to read Psalm 100 instead. Actually, that's an oversimplification of what happened. But I'm afraid to tell you what really happened for fear that you might think your pastor hears voices. Let me assure you, I don't. But that's the only way that I can describe how God nudges me sometimes. I hear God's voice as my own voice. A little bit different, but you know what I mean, I think. So what really happened in that moment is an internal dialogue with God that went something like this. Don't read that passage from Isaiah. Read that passage in Psalms where I talk about singing a song, singing a new song. Psalm 100, I think it is. But Mabel just had a stroke, God. She is a musician. Speech is difficult for her right now. How will it make Mabel feel if I read a psalm about singing and coming into your presence with a new song? Trust me, God says. And so I did. I read Psalm 100. If you know Mabel, you know that she has always been a musician. And up to this point of her stroke, up to this point in our relationship, whenever I had visited Mabel, she had shared memories with me of playing her accordion in a band, of dancing up a storm, and she would yodel during our visits, her specialty. So standing in the center of the room, all eyes on me, I was still not certain, beyond a reasonable doubt, that I should read Psalm 100. For though it is a beautiful psalm, it speaks of singing and coming into God's presence with a song. And I was not sure, frankly, how Mabel would hear that day, as her speech and her mobility had just been so compromised by a stroke. But listening to the birds singing outside of Gladys's window, where Gladys sat, I felt a nudge to read Psalm 100. I paused. And I looked up and said, I'll bet you both have great memories of singing a new song. and the birds chirped away outside the window. Yes, Gladys began. My sisters and I would sing every day while we washed the dishes, and my mom would chime in. And as Gladys was speaking, we heard this faint, lilting voice coming from the other side of the room. When it's springtime in the Rockies, I'm coming back to you. It was Mabel. This was years ago. And pretty soon Gladys started to giggle. Oh, we used to sing that song, she said. And so then she started singing. And it was such a beautiful sound. While a stroke may have sidelined her, Mabel sang a new song. She chose to sing. And I heard the power and I felt the presence of God's Holy Spirit in that room, a presence that conquers this world, even when those who have faith have none. It is God within us who gives us the power to sing, who gives us the strength and the faith that conquers this world and helps us to find our voice when we've been sidelined by circumstances that are not of our own choosing. When life happens and things happen to us that are beyond our choosing, may we always remember that God has chosen us. One more story about being chosen. Some years ago, there was a woman that I knew by acquaintance. We would see each other on occasion at community functions and in passing at school and at the grocery store. Our visits were always very cordial, but always very quite brief. I am not proud to admit this, but truth be told, I had decided early on that we would probably not become friends. She was nice to run into, but I had decided that we were probably very, very different. We didn't have much in common in life, I had decided, and we couldn't be more different when it came to matters of faith, I was sure. After having chatted only a few times in the grocery store and at school and a few other functions one year, I was entering the annual Synod Assembly of our congregations of our La Crosse area Synod, and there she was. She was attending the Synod Assembly as a delegate from her congregation. She had been chosen by her congregation. She had been entrusted to make decisions on their behalf at the same Synod Assembly I was attending. As we spoke, I learned we had much more in common than I had thought. Our daughters were friends. And when we saw each other at the grocery store, we had much more to talk about from then on. In my sinfulness, I had judged this woman to be outside the realm of those whom God had chosen. I had counted myself in the realm and her outside of it. I had convinced myself that she would not understand or have any appreciation whatsoever for the God that I love. But the God I love also loves her. And as it turns out, she loves God too. Blessedly, God still chooses me, and God still chooses you, even when we place ourselves or others outside the realm of God. Even in our sinfulness, God chooses us. Whether we are athletic or dramatic, whether our bodies are strong or frail, whether our relationships in life are thriving or hanging on, whether our faith is abounding or just a thin thread, God chooses us. No matter what, in Him we belong. In Him we belong. And that is the best news that there is. We are chosen. We are forgiven beyond our deserving. We are chosen in the waters of baptism as Nora was this morning. And we are sent out every day to bear God's creative, redeeming, and radical love with this world in need. But even so, we are also sent to receive that love. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.